Hello everyone, thank you for joining me. I hope you're comfortable. I hope you're able to spend a bit of time with me to listen to this episode, and that helps you to de-stress a bit, to disconnect from this physical world we are all a part of, to feel closer to the source and to be reminded of your true essence and where you really come from. Now, I don't know if this experience will tap into any of those situations or desires or things, for lack of a better word, because I can't think of one that I just mentioned, but let's see, and hopefully it can at least distract you a bit from this complex life as a human and take you to another dimension. So let's have a listen to this guy is called Randy, and this is Randy's experience. I was a successful businessman, entrepreneur, inventor until 1999, when I became a victim to alcohol. I was committed to treatment in Madison, Wisconsin, to the later part of 1999. 8 days into the program, in my sleep, I fell into a type of seizure that the doctors could not describe. Not knowing anything because I was asleep, I all of a sudden realized that I was looking down at myself on the floor from the room above, moving slowly away. As I was looking down, I saw 2 paramedics working on me. 3 of my friends were watching over me. At this time, and throughout the rest of the experience, I had no feelings about what I was looking back at. Nothing had any value anymore. My body meant nothing to me either. As I was slowly moving away, I felt myself moving through a wall. There was a black rectangle I saw, which I realized was a stud in the wall in front of me. After moving through the wall, I realized I'd entered a new dimension of consciousness. I suddenly realized that I was in the control of some being, or so powerful it was overwhelming. It was the God I had so hard tried to believe in on earth. The following feelings I experienced cannot be felt while in the human consciousness. The first thing I felt was that I had no body. I felt like I was going to fall, but then realized I could not. I realized I had all of my faculties and could still reason. At that moment, I felt the presence of my Creator, and my struggle to believe in a God on earth was over. God had complete control over me, which was so soothing it was indescribable. God was emanating an unconditional love of itself, and for me. My God was taking me, and it felt so good. I felt no pain anymore, nor any of the other miseries felt on earth, including time. There was no time. I was in total comfort. Through this, God gave me a feeling, but no sight of something. Some place that was so horrible for those that had rejected him on earth. To this day, I carry that same feeling. After all this, I was moving toward an opening or something I could not make out yet. I was just entering his light, different from what we know on earth. Then God spoke to me in a voice unlike any on earth. It was all telepathic between us, but was like talking on earth. God then asked me a question. Is there anything worthy of me to come back to earth for? Instantly, there was only one thing that came to me. It was the woman in my life who I love so much. My love for her expressed the same love that he was all about. I replied to God, "My Nancy." I had never felt this type of love for anything or anybody in my life except for her. At that moment, I reversed my floating and followed my path back to my body, where I felt this heavy pounding in my chest. As I started to awaken, I could barely see the two paramedics over me. I was in a semi-conscious state all the way to the hospital and into the hours in emergency. As I was coming to, I didn't know what happened to me because I had been asleep through all of this. A doctor had come in who was treating me and said he couldn't diagnose what had happened. Minutes after that, two paramedics came in to see if I was all right. It was at this time that I just started to realize something. As the paramedics turned to walk away, I saw the backsides to their heads and realized that I'd seen the backside of their heads before. I couldn't have seen them before as I did without being behind them somewhere. As I was recuperating in hospital, I started getting bits and pieces of what seemed to be a dream I had had. This went on for hours until I realized I had died and it was no dream. It was amazing, but I was given all the feelings that I felt on the other side through this recall. While back in the treatment center, I had asked my friends about what had happened and where they were standing while I was on the floor. They told me exactly what I saw from the other side. I realized that a thin layer exists between life and death, which I consider now as life after life. Dreams are forgotten, but this was no dream. It is almost 12 years now since this happened, and to this day, when I lie down to go to sleep, I immediately find myself reliving that adventure. Throughout the day, I will find myself back there, only for a moment. Though this didn't change my life so much at the time, it was several years later that a brilliant light, the same light of God, came out of the sky and was shown to me in my backyard. In a moment that had changed my life, the meaning of my trip to the other side became apparent. I now know what loving one another and helping one another was all about. I finally knew the true meaning of humility and that earthly things absolutely don't matter to me anymore. I became possessed with undoing the wrongs of my life and replacing them with all the good things in the eyes of God. I believe all this to be true and correct, and nobody can take this away from me or change my mind about it. Thank you for giving me the opportunity to share this experience, and perhaps enlighten others. So that's the end of Randy's experience. Let's go through that again and have a bit of analysis. So this experience occurred back in 1999, so unbelievably that is, 25 years ago now. So this Randy, he is in some kind of rehabilitation for, it looks like, alcohol dependence. And as can often happen when you are withdrawing from drugs, you can have health issues. And in Randy's case, he is in this place and he starts to have a seizure. And after the seizure is when he leaves his body. He starts to separate and sees someone lying down on the floor. He looks at the floor and sees a couple of paramedics working on a body. And there's a couple of friends of his standing next to these paramedics. And he realizes that it's his body and there's no real emotion attached to it. The body means nothing to me. He says his whole experience doesn't really mean much anymore. It's just a body on the ground and there's a fair bit of detachment to what he is seeing. So then he starts to drift further away. He starts moving through a wall and finds himself crossing over to this other dimension, is the word he uses. So it's interesting, like he can leave his body, he can still see what is going on in this physical realm, and then he seems to cross this barrier where the experience goes to a whole new multi-dimensional level, which is, I guess, less about seeing and more about feeling and experiencing. And he doesn't use these words, but just about every episode I read, it seems once it gets to this part of the experience, words aren't really doing justice to what is going on here and are insufficient to describe exactly what Randy is experiencing. So in this other dimension, he obviously can still realize he still exists. He still has an awareness. He doesn't have a body. He's got this sensation that he's floating, but at the same time he realizes that he can't fall, even though he feels like it is a possibility. He can still think, he can still move around, and he feels this presence of his creator. And he's struggled to believe in a God while he was a human, but once he gets to this dimension, he feels the presence and he feels as though his search for God is finally over. I think that's why a lot of us struggle to connect to God or this other dimension, or understand what God even is. because in this other realm, this connection to God is so indescribable that it's almost as though you have to be out of your body to fully understand exactly what this experience of God or Source is actually like. So although a lot of the religious teachings we have here on earth as humans are good pointers as to what God actually is, the connection you get and the experience you get when you are in that spiritual or soul form is so beyond human conception that it just blitzes any comprehension we as people are able to articulate in terms of what this experience as a soul in the presence of God is actually like. But Randy, of course, gives us a little bit of a glimpse as to what this was like for him in his own human words. So for him, it's God takes total control over him. For him, this is described as being a soothing kind of experience. He feels unconditionally loved by this presence, and he words it as unconditional love for itself. So I guess he's saying that God is unconditional love, and somehow he still feels his own distinct separation from it, yet part of it at the same time. So he can kind of maintain his unique awareness while understanding there's more around him. So it's like he's a part of God but separate to God at the same time. He feels like God is, he's a part of God, but he somehow maintains his own unique identity, and that is what you hear a lot of in these experiences, this difficulty in describing this disconnection yet connection at the same time, like maintaining one's own unique awareness, perspective, experience, yet being part of everything all at once. It doesn't seem like something that is possible as a human looking at this. Like, how can you be part of everything and be everything, yet be your own little unique part of that awareness of everything at the same time? But I've read in some of these experiences that this is what God is. It is everything, but it's also infinite miniature particles that make up everything. And these, I don't know, like I think I'm getting a little bit out of my depth here and trying to explain or comprehend what this this means. This individual consciousness yet universal consciousness is difficult for me to try to understand, and if I can't understand it myself, then there's no way I'm going to be able to tell you exactly how it is, because I don't know what it is myself. So I wish I could channel some highly intelligent being and relay to you exactly what this other dimension is like in a way that is a comprehensive analysis and description. But yes, this is not something I am capable of, but there are people out there who are able to do that. So if you are interested in channeling, go and Google something like that, and there's plenty of material out there. So Randy is clearly crossed over. He's floated away from his body. Now he has entered this loving dimension that he is describing as pretty much being connected to God. This next line he says, he kind of gets a glimpse of hell, it sounds like he says God takes him to this other place, and he just spends one line on this, doesn't go into much detail, and says that God quickly gives him, he says, not a sight or a look or a glimpse, but more like a feeling of some place that is so horrible. And Randy describes this place as where people go when they reject God on this earthly plane. I always struggle with reading about hell and this being an eternal place of suffering people go when they die just because they didn't choose God in this world. Like, God is an elusive thing, and it's hard to embrace something you can't see, experience easily, and to think that there's punishment for that is very difficult for me to accept. Nonetheless, it is regularly mentioned in these experiences that people go to places they don't like to be in, and there clearly are experiences in this universe that are dark and difficult to go through. I guess what I get out of this line here is that, look, embracing God, seeking God, encouraging God into your life is going to take away some of the darkness and difficulties and make the challenges a bit easier in this physical realm. And potentially, I guess, if you continue into this next dimension and continue to push the light away, there is a chance that your consciousness, your soul, your spirit will go seeking darker experiences in the next life. But then I think, in most of these experiences, once people realize who they are, once they realize they're not this human body, once they realize their light, their soul, their spirit, it's almost a natural thing for them to want to reconnect with God. So it's hard for me to comprehend seeking darkness once you know there is light, and once you know the truth of your essence. It's one of those things that is difficult for me to comprehend and explain, and it's hard, isn't it? You can't get your head around some of the things you hear in these experiences, but that's understandable because this is a realm that is beyond our comprehension, and human words are not doing exactly justice, and there's more complexities to this universe than I guess we see with our human eyes. But anyway, Randy is given this feeling of a place where people go when they reject God, and for me that sounds very much like hell and punishment, but we'll leave that there. So he's moving along. He's still being given this semi-tour, I guess, of this new dimension. And he starts to have a bit of a chat with God at this next point. He feels like he's beginning to kind of enter God's light, is what the words he uses. And God says to him in a telepathic way, like we hear every week, is there anything worth going back to Earth for? And he says his instant reply in a telepathic manner is his, I don't know, does it say wife or girlfriend or partner? His partner Nancy. And as soon as Randy thinks of Nancy, he feels this intense love for her, some kind of feeling he's never had for anyone else but her. And he kind of describes that feeling that he is having upon reflection of his partner as what God is. Like God is that feeling of love. It's amazing to think that God and love are so often put in the same sentence. And is that because one of the best ways to describe God, to describe the creator of the universe, is love, is what we humans know as love? But obviously there's a lot more words we could throw in there, because there's creativity, there's obviously a lot of intelligence, there's obviously a lot of power in what God is, because this universe has been created by this energy. And I think those few words there are a few good ways of describing what God is, if we listen to these experiences and hear what other people describe God as. So Randy then begins to, after God says to him, do you want to come back? When God says, what do you want to come back for? And he says, his partner, this is when he kind of realizes that that's the end of his experience, and he starts making that transformation back into this physical realm. This moment of coming back to your body must be incredibly confusing. I mean, the whole experience must be very, very confusing for people, but to have that experience of leaving your body, seeing your dead body on the ground, having paramedics work on it, going to this other dimension where you meet this incredibly loving, powerful being, and then have a bit of a chat with it, and then find yourself coming back into this physical realm, back into this physical body. I think confusing probably is inadequate to describe how that would feel. It's obviously going to have many different emotions. In Randy's case, it feels to me as though he chooses to come back in a way. Like once God reminds him that he has a good reason to come back, it just, the process of re-entering his body just naturally starts to occur. And then he kind of gets back into his body and is really unsure once he starts to re-enter his normal human consciousness. Exactly what has happened, like he's a little bit confused as to whether it was a real, whether it was a dream, like was it his mind playing tricks on him? But as time goes by, he just realizes that what has happened is a connection and an experience he's had with God, that this was no dream. Dreams are foggy, hazy, and easily forgotten, whereas this is crystal clear to him. He feels this strong connection to a source, to the light, and feels as though what he experienced was for him proof of God. And the takeaways he gets from this experience are pretty common as well. He says what he feels he was taught through this experience was that loving one another and helping each other is what life is all about. He doesn't actually say that he had a conversation about this. It's more, I guess, an intuition or knowing that this is what his purpose is now, that I guess compassion and kindness to one another is a vital part of improving this planet. And this is what I guess he is saying is the main purpose or meaning of life and being here. He says this experience has taught him the true meaning of humility and how materialism is not going to bring you happiness. Owning all the latest gadgets and gizmos is not the way to live a life that is full of satisfaction. He feels that this experience has given him the opportunity to right the wrongs that he has done so far in his life and start replacing them with good things in the eyes of God. And he says, that this experience might sound unusual or crazy or impossible to many people on this planet, but for him, it is been a life-changing experience that no one can take away from him, and it is an experience he reflects on a daily basis. So that's Randy's experience. No, not an overly complicated one, just a simple leave the body, go to the light, come back to the body. So yeah, hopefully there was something in there for you to connect to and learn from, and but yeah, like I said at the beginning, or maybe it was just an opportunity to chill out and have half an hour away from whatever's going on in your human life. But for me, just and hopefully for you, just these little segues or reminders of what this other dimension is like, and where we go back to it doesn't matter how well written the experience is or how incredibly profound the experience is in terms of the description and where they go and who they talk to. All we need is that little reminder, I think, of a step into another dimension and a reminder that there's much more to you than this human body, and there is a place where you can go back to after you've been here that wipes away all those dark places you've been as a human, and takes you to a realm where you don't have to be exposed to that suffering anymore. This place is the place to learn, to grow, to have fun, to ride the roller coaster, really. So I guess we should do our best to enjoy it, because it is an incredible experience to be a human, and although there's a lot of difficulties to it, there's many blessings along the road as well. So hopefully you can have more and more of them in your life. And for me, my personal journey is getting that connection to God back as much as I can in this human body, and hopefully you're a bit like me, and hearing more about these experiences helps that connection grow and strengthen and blossom, and gives us a pathway to reconnecting to that source where we all come from. Thank you for listening to me. I hope you have a good week. I send you all my love, and we'll talk to you next week.